Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget you can read my work on ESPN.com. We have a story up now, just kind of comparing these two offenses with the Ravens. I did this with Jamison Hensley, our ESPN reporter. Kind of took a look at who are some of the most underrated parts of the offense, whether a person, whether a group, maybe an underrated hero or star, whatever. And can they keep this going? What could trip them up? Could an MVP come from this offense? And there's a long way to go, but you can read it. I do think the answer is yes for Washington if they continue like this. I do also know that it's very difficult for a rookie to win that. I look at CJ Stroud last year. He finished, I think it was 8th in the voting, and he had a fantastic rookie year as well. Also led the Texans to the playoffs, also led them to like a 7-game improvement. But Jayden Daniels deserves right now to be in that conversation. Let's see where the season goes. Anyways, got my 5 things I think today. Before I get there, a couple news and notes and nuggets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So let's start with the injury report because Brian Robinson is now listed again as questionable. Safety Tyler Owens is out, but and then Cleveland Farrell, he'll play. Noah Brown, he'll play. Those are both good developments for Washington, especially for this game. For any game. Now for Robinson, again, listed as questionable with the knee, did not practice this week, did not see him out in the field. Last week at this time, I felt like he would play, and it still sounds like, Dan Quinn said they're gonna see how he feels on Saturday, much like they did last week. And then if they have to, they'll take it up to game time, or at least till they have to make a decision about an about an hour and a half before kickoff. So that's when they declare inactive. So that's what we know now. Is it? I did ask Quinn today, is this something that he has to be worried about long term? He said right now he feels like it's a short term thing. If they feel it's going to be a long-term thing, then you make maybe a different decision to rest a guy or to sit a guy because you do want him for the long haul. This is a big game in the eyes of the sporting public. For these teams, it's one of 17, and you want this guy for all the other games, not just this one. So we'll see what happens. He did not play in the second half last week, as I'm sure you know. And if he doesn't go, then you have Jeremy McNichols to pair with Austin Eckler, and then you either bring up Chris Rodriguez or Michael Wiley. And they do have creative ways to get other guys the ball out of the backfield. Lamade Zaccheaus has lined up in the backfield a couple of times. Could you use him out there with Eckler? Sure, why not? Because it gives you a different look. And I think they've done a good job of creatively using guys in ways that is just maybe a little bit more than what other teams would have done with certain guys. So we've already seen that. So don't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, I should say, if they do something like that, if you don't have Robinson available. And even if you do, like it gives somebody a different look. The Ravens are hard to run against. I'll get to that in a minute. So that's what we know about the injuries. Like I said, everybody else is good to go. Efe Obada, questionable. He still is on. He's still recovering from his injury, but he's been working out, of course. Same with Jordan McGee. I don't know what their status is. They do have a roster spot available. If they want to elevate one of those guys or make one of those guys active for this game, they can do that. So that's what we know now. Check back for all the information. If Robbins isn't out, check back on ESPN.com for more information. There you go. So let's get to the 5 things I think. Let's start with number 1, Jayden Daniels. And I just think he's been very mature in his approach. I think that's one of the things that is going to continue to help him develop. I told you before, others have told me this. He didn't come here to go 3-1, 4-1, whatever. He came here to win Super Bowls, to be really good, but to be successful. They haven't accomplished that yet. What they've accomplished is 4 wins in their first 5 games, nothing more. But the one thing that gets everybody excited out there when you talk to people and their eyes kind of light up when you talk to them is just the things that he has already improved upon, and yet the things that they know he can still get better at, and that will make this offense even more efficient, explosive, scary, whatever you want to say. So the one thing that they've really felt good about is the development of keeping his eyes up as he scrambles. It's not always resulting in a big play. It's not always resulting even in a pass. But the fact that he's doing it, was one player told me, he's like, he learned that after one game. That's something that is but difficult to do, but you're changing some of the way that you've done things, right? So that is it's a speedy development, I'll just say. So that was a positive development for him. And that's one of the things that they feel good about. Like, okay, he can learn, he's learning this stuff, he's improving on all this stuff, and the offense goes. There are a couple plays last week that also show this. That he had the one scramble, it's a 3rd and 1, and he's got Terry McLaurin open in the end zone. He doesn't throw it, but that's one where you can go back. Certainly, so there are some times, and even receivers know, and this is one of the things I think that is good for this team to have Terry McLaurin as the receiver with Jaden Daniels, because he's not going to go up and say something to Jaden, hey man, I was open on this play. You got to get me the ball. He understands what the quarterback, what might be thinking. And that situation is 3rd and 1, get the first down. So as you get more comfortable with the situation, next time you hit Terry McLaurin. But I think it's safe to say that they know that the coaches will see it. He'll see it on the films like, oh, I could have done this. But he gets the first down. They end up scoring on that drive. It's a really good job by him to pick it up, and he knows that. But the next step is to see him, and that's where we'll get to. But again, it helps to have a guy like McLaurin. This is where this receiving core too. It's McLaurin, but the rest of them, they don't have that guys like who is just itching to get paid or wants the glory or whatever it is, or is the typical receiver diva. McLaurin is not that. McLaurin is their best guy, but I think because the way he was brought up in the game, what he had to work for to get, the fact that he wasn't coming in as some #1 pick standout. He was coming in as a guy that they thought would play special teams and be a contributing receiver. So, but the work ethic and other ways approach makes a difference. And so, and that also helps a young quarterback. I remember when Kirk Cousins was here and he had guys like Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garcon, pretty strong-minded guys, not shy to express their thoughts or opinions. And it did not help Cousins a lot, right? And so I don't think he knew how to handle that. And I think now he'd be much better to handle it because he's a veteran. But to do that when you're first starting out, trying to get comfortable, et cetera, and you have to deal with the personalities like that, it's difficult. So this is a good group for Daniels to grow and develop with, and specifically Terry McLaurin. So the other lesson too, and go back to McLaurin because this is something you see too, on the one interception, you have to make quick decisions in there, right? So I think it's hard to fault Daniels just for picking a side and going because that's what you're supposed to do in the red zone. You don't have time just like to say, okay, I could have gone over here because McLaurin was open. But I think the lesson would be if you know you have a man look on a side, and if you know, and especially if that side includes your top receiver, that's where probably they would say to go next time, right? Because there was a little bit of a predetermined read. But the lesson is, and this is why, again, this is why they get excited about him because they know he's going to see it, they know he's going to grow with it, and they know he's going to do that the next time. And I always point these out for that reason. It's not about criticism or anything like that. It's about growth development. Where can you get better? As I said earlier, after 5 games, if you have an MVP conversation for the league and you don't include him, you're doing it wrong. So whether or not he goes on to win the award after 5 games, it's hard to find a more impactful quarterback. And you got another one on Sunday in Lamar Jackson, but it's hard to find a lot, more guys that have been that much more impactful. And that's where, again, that's why they get excited because look at what the offense is doing, look at what he's doing, and it can get better. So because 5 games takes more. But those are things, but then you go to the play to De'Ami Brown, which as we all know, like he went and told Kingsbury that to get this. And I even asked Jaden during the week, was it because you had that play, you saw the coverage, and there's really as much, he just goes, he knew what the coverage was going to be. If you give him this look, you know what the coverage you're going to get because that's what they've been showing. And so it wasn't so much that he knew that Brown was wide open on that play or that Brown had said anything to him. He just knew the coverage they would get and he wanted to get it back to him because he felt like the defensive back was there to be had. So that's a really good thing to have as a quarterback. But I think the biggest thing still, and I said this earlier in the week, to me, the biggest thing is the offensive coordinator didn't think twice. He went and did it and listened to his guy. That's how you develop trust. And it's where, a guy gets confidence in what he's seeing. But to have that kind of confidence in him right away like that, to say, you see this, let's go. This is what you want. But this is where, when you're in a quarterback friendly offense, you have a guy who suggesting this. Like he sees it and you're giving that freedom. And then it's like, it's got to give guys a really good feeling to know that the guy listened to me. He listened. Because I'll tell you what, there are a lot of things that were suggested last year that were not listened to or took a long time to be listened to. This was boom, boom. And that has to be a good feeling. I know it is a good feeling for any quarterback. So that's where you see like the high level, whether the IQ, the savviness, whatever he poise, to suggest that in that moment, that's where you see a lot of not even growth, it's who he is. And I think that's why, again, that's why they're all excited about where they're going or where he's going. All right, number two, I think they have really good chemistry, and I'm going to go to the defensive line for that. We can see the chemistry, but there's a couple things with this. So Fedarian Mathis last week had a really good game. To me, it was probably maybe his best game in Washington, and I think the coaches would agree. One of the things that brought up, we talked to Daryl Tapp today, but one of the things that came up about him is that he's healthy. He feels healthy. And I think that's made a difference in how he's playing. He's playing more consistent minutes now. But I will say, like even the week before, I didn't think that he necessarily played his best game. I thought there were some moments where it's like, you got to do better here. That's why last week to me jumped out because he was doing all that. He played to his size. And I think that's a really good thing, and it was consistently like he did a nice job throughout the game. It wasn't one or two plays. It was he made some stops. He got off blocks. There were a lot of positive developments for him. And I think, those kind of things can fuel growth. And I think it helps too. And one of the things that Tapp talked about, and, just in talking to others after or later, is that's a really good room. And you have guys like John Allen, Deron Payne, who played a lot, seen a lot, but it's also Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Farrell. Like that defensive room is really, really good for that, right? So I think that's where you can, if you reach a young guy like a Mathis, like a Johnny Newton, that makes a difference because Johnny Newton, like they see it. It's funny because I told some of them, I was pointing out like this dude's doing this. He goes, you're seeing it. What do you think we're seeing? So like that's where, and that's another guy whose development I think will be crucial as this defense continues to go down, to improve. If they do improve, I think it's going to be fueled by guys like Newton who get better and better. And what that happens when you see Mathis and Newton doing things, what else also happens? You give Payne and Allen more of a break. And it's funny because I know there are a lot of times with some of these guys, like after the game, you're like, you can't play us 90% of the snaps. You can't play us this much. But during the game, do you really want to leave it up to someone else at times? Well, the answer is sometimes no, if you don't think those guys can play. But if you see they can play, it gives you the ability to feel okay being out, sitting out for a series and feeling like it's going to be okay because these guys are doing this. I still think like with Mathis, I'd like to see it a little bit more, not just to see more so, not so much see how does he build on that game? Because again, that was his best game. And if there's a technique that they all have to get used to, or just getting used to new defense. But it does sound like the confidence from just being on the field, playing consistently, starts to build on it. So how does he build on that game? Because this will be a really good offensive front to play against. So does he build on it? But if so, and I think you can look at just, again, the health factor, but also the leadership in that room with some of the veterans they brought in. And that's going to speak to the other thing I want to talk about, which is how important in free agency. Go back to free agency because I'm going to do this because you hear a lot of times, people want to chase big names. You chase fit. You don't chase names, you chase fit. And I think what we're seeing here is they chased fit. And what mattered was how much each of these coaches knew. Like Daryl Tapp had worked with Cleveland Farrell. Obviously, Dorrance Armstrong was with Quinn in Dallas. So these guys, they brought in guys that they knew and knew what kind of guys they were bringing. What you don't know is how the room then fits together. But if you bring in the right guys, you have a better chance of making it work. And I think they really hit a home run on the type of guys they brought in, whether it's in the draft, because I think the draft was a lot like that. And somebody asked that about to Quinn in the press conference on Friday, is this like how, about the Keim, because he said this is basically as fast as a group has gelled for him that he's been around. So that says a lot. So why is that? Well, some of that goes back to what I said, the fit and free agency, chase fit, not names. And remember that, please, in the offseason, because Just because there's a big name out there doesn't mean he's going to help a team. It has to be the right, not just in terms of the right person, because there is a play style and there is a talent, whatever, but along with that is what kind of football IQ does he have? What kind of football habits does he have? Work ethic. All right. Doesn't have to be a choir boy, but you've got to fit into what they're looking for your football culture. And I think they did a really good job with that. Like, Quinn was talking about with Armstrong is what a great communicator he is on the front and how he's really good at recognizing things. You need that up there. And Farrell has been a guy that's what he's known for a lot of this too, right? So I think that all matters. And then you get guys like Wagner, et cetera. But it's why it matters. And then you look at the draft class, and you have a lot of guys that are like that. Jaden Daniels is in that group. Mike Samerstill in that kind of group. Brandon Coleman in that kind of group. Luke McCaffrey, et cetera, et cetera. So when you do that, that's how you start to create the right culture for your organization. And then you get these are the results. Like these are the intangible things that you don't know how it's going to look. But I think anybody who was around the team, you felt like you could feel that. But when would it matter? Like, how much would it matter? And there's still a long ways to go, but you can see that it does matter. And it has mattered here because of and I think it speaks volumes to the type of what they were looking for, and there's the type of guys they brought in and how well it's meshed to date. So now you can look at Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, all those kind of guys. I mean, I think Noah Brown's in that group for sure, and he's a late pickup, but that's what someone else said too. Like it wasn't the guys that are coming in and doing this, they have been here, so they had a chance to build this all up beforehand. It's funny because Daryl Tapp was on that dream team, Eagles team way back when that just laid a massive egg. Well, part of the problem was, and I remember talking to this before, like they brought a lot of those guys in late, so they didn't have a chance to build up the kind of chemistry that this team does. And whereas this team, all the key guys have been here. Then you had a couple guys came in late, again, like a Noah Brown, Austin Seibert, that's a little bit different with the kicker, but Noah Brown came in late, but he has a similar mindset to, I think, what the group that's here. That matters. Again, fit, not names. Always remember that because I think they're showing that it definitely does matter. All right, number 3. Is this a big game? Well, of course it is, but how big is it? And should you put more importance on it? The answer is no, because what happens, you can't do that because what if you go out and lose? Well, you got a game the next week. What you can't let happen is have a loss bleed into a loss. Or let's say you go out and win. You can't go out there and celebrate because guess what? You have a game next week. You go out and beat the Ravens and you lose at home to the Panthers. What did you accomplish? Well, you showed that you could beat one of the best teams in the NFL, and then you would have showed you could have lose to one of the worst teams in the NFL at home. So you've got to treat this like, okay, this is another game. And this is why, you stick to an approach. And I think this is one of the things I really appreciate about this group is the consistent messaging that comes from Quinn and then comes from the players. And I think it helps to have guys like Wagner and Ertz and guys like Austin Eckler, guys who have been through things, especially Wagner and Ertz, because they've won. They've won titles. They know, I've talked to Wagner about this. Like they're very well aware, like, you're 3-1, you're 4-1. Like that's it. They know that Super Bowls are not won in week 6. So I think like you can look for things too in the locker room to see. I think one of the things Wagner can, and he will see that, but he's not a guy who's going to go scouting around and looking like that because he hasn't seen that kind of stuff. He hasn't seen guys slip up with what they're working to do because if it matters to you, if you set the tone in your room, you bring in guys like Frankie Louvu who play a certain way, you don't have to worry quite as much about that because they're going to handle their business. And that's a big deal. So if you go about your approach the same way, you have a rookie quarterback who is not getting caught up in any of this. That's a really good sign because trust me, there have been other young quarterbacks here who do get caught up in all that stuff. If you take the same approach week after week, you will be fine. Win or lose in this game, you'll be fine because you shouldn't put any more emphasis on this. I mean, it's a fun game, like for fans, for media. This is a fun game to go to. And I don't remember the last time I've said that in October about this franchise. Even in the Robert years, they weren't good at this point. It was later that they became good. Then it became more interesting. It was fun to go watch him, but it wasn't fun to necessarily watch them because there was still too much. I mean, they were what, 3-7 at one point. So it's been a long time since after this many games. And even like the Zorn era, I was like, well, I guess they're good. And but were they fun to watch? Not necessarily. They were good at this point, but you didn't know like, could they really keep this going? And you got, but it was different, right? So this is fun for us to go to. But I think as a team, you need to make sure that you're taking the right approach. And if they do that, I think they will be okay. You can't 2021, they beat Tampa Bay. They went on a 4-game winning streak, and then they lost 4 in a row. Now, injuries and other stuff happen, but the point is, they beat the defending Super Bowl champ, right? Or I think that was, but yet they didn't make the playoffs. So what did it do, right? I mean, it showed that what they could do when healthy and when all this, that's great, but you still want to be able to build. And they did build on, they won 3 in a row after that. So it did help, but they didn't make the playoffs. So you want to make sure that if your approach is the same, you can go and build on this game, whatever happens. You go on to the next week. If they win, if you can take care of business at home, now you're in really good shape. If you lose, you can come back and recover at home, and you're still in good shape. So I think this is a good team because of the approach they take, because of the mindset they have. And so whatever happens in this game, it will be okay. Because I think, if you're looking at this like, well, I'm not going to believe in them until this game, well, I think you're doing it wrong because I think every game you learn something, right? To me, I learned a lot about them in the Arizona game, coming off a huge win on Monday Night Football. What's happened here in the past? Oh, they can't handle prosperity. They go out and lose the next week. They go on the road away from home, train out or work out in Arizona all week, and then win by 28 against an offense that had been producing, right? So that you learn something there. They come back home, they're facing a team that's not very good. And what do? They handle business and they win by 21. Like that's when you start to know, like, okay, that's the right way to handle things. So that's why I say, like, yes, is Baltimore the best team they faced? Well, Tampa Bay was pretty damn good too. So it's certainly in that category, and you want to see them play. Like to me, it's just play a good game, play a good, clean game, because if you do that consistently, you will be fine. And I'm not trying to set up a loss or a win because I don't know. Like I think this is going to be a fun game. I can certainly see them winning. But can you see? Of course, Baltimore's a good team. It's a road game, and so anything it can certainly go wrong or go bad for Washington. But my point is, you can't let it lead, and you can't let one loss bleed into another, or you can't let a win lead to a game that you should win and then you lose. You can't do that, right? Now, if you win both, that's even better. But my point is, if you put too much emphasis on one, then it could get you caught up, or it could trip you up the following week. So, but that's why I like the way they've handled this. I think they've been pretty good at I wouldn't say blocking out the noise because I don't know what they've done, but I think from the coach's standpoint, I think they've put the right emphasis on this, and they answer the questions about like, hey, you're 4-1. What does this mean to the area? And can you feel the excitement in the area? Well, the answer is yes. I think, and they love that because they felt that at the stadium last week, and they'll feel it again when the team comes back. But I think that they're in a good spot as long as they continue this mindset, and I think they will because I think it's who they are. And like I said, to me, every game shows something about you. The Bengals game showed a ton. It's a Monday night game. It's on the road. You're facing a really good offense, and you just kept matching. You did more than match that offense, and then you made big plays when you needed them. I think that's where this team feels really good, that you have a quarterback that gives you hope that, all right, hey, just keep in the game, keep the team in the game, and and number 5 will find a way, because I think that's what he's doing. So it is a chance for growth, and it's a chance for this defense to grow for sure. I wouldn't minimize a win, but I also am not going to over dramatize a loss either, because I just think that there's a long way to go for this. So anyway, number 3, how to attack the Ravens defense. I mean, this is a really good. I mean, I think it goes without saying that there's a lot of good parts in this defense, and it stops with the run. They are really good against the run. 3 carries over 10 yards this year allowed. That's really good. So you're going to have to, you can't abandon the run, and I don't expect them to because I don't think that's their style. I think you have to find good ways to run the ball. I saw one successful run and a little crack toss sweep, and you can do some of that. You give a chance to get the linebackers to and take care of Kyle Hamilton. He's a really good safety. Yes, he could have been here. So there are ways that you can, I think the big thing is you have to stay committed to it. You don't have to get 5, 6, 7 yards, but if you can stay ahead of the chain, you get 3 yards on a first down run, sometimes four. Can you get that? And the beauty for them is using Daniels' legs because I think the ability to hold the backside and allow the blockers to get out there, maybe create a cutback lane for Eckler, Robinson, McNichols, whomever, that's what you need to do. So the threat of Daniel's legs will help them in the ground game. They are really good on the outside. They're really good at coming up fast too, especially the safeties, especially Kyle Hamilton. Like you watch that guy play the run. I'm watching a sweep, actually the sweep that got like 5, 6, 7 yards, but the way he comes up and attacks the pulling lineman, it's really kind of cool to see a safety like that. Yes, again, he would have looked good here. But he's not here. So but he is a key reason why I think that defense is still very good against the run. Roquan Smith is very good. Linebacker, their defensive front is really good. So there's a lot of really good parts. And I think that's something to be content with. I think you're gonna have to really use a lot of what they've done. Like they're really good at creating motion and creating and getting your eyes just to hesitate a little bit with the jet action, with the fakes. And you see this with Baltimore do it too, but you get two guys in the backfield, you're gonna fake it one way, you get the jet going the other way, you get a tight end coming back this way, and the quarterback's going that way. So the good thing for them is if I think the way they feel like this offense can evolve is, all right, you got some of those plays. Well, you have four options on those plays. You can get the jet, you can hand it off, you can do bootleg, you can do, play action off that, or you can quarterback run. So there's a lot of ways to evolve that if one thing gets taken away. So you're going to have to be a little bit creative with that, for sure. And, sometimes like Ben Sinnott as a lead blocker, yep, that works. That can work too. So I think that's all good. The other thing that you notice with the Ravens defense, they are giving up some yards in the pass game. Now, be careful here because there have been 3 games where quarterbacks have completed more than 70% of their passes, and 2 where it's been under 55% of the passes. So last week against the Bengals, they had a really good offensive game. In fact, the Bengals should have won that game. They went a little bit conservative in overtime, missed a field goal. That the Ravens could easily be 2-3. So keep that in mind. But one thing that Burrow did really well, Burrow is just a really good quarterback, right? So there were a lot of throws where it adds up to yards. Like that's a really hard throw. And that's one where it's like you are relying on trust, accuracy, that your guy's going to make a play because he's coming out of his break and he is covered because that ball's there, can't break it up. That's where, so Burrow had a lot of plays like that where you see that it's quarterback excelling at what he does and also then hurting the Ravens defense. Now there are other times where I felt like the concepts got to them, and you can do that, and you can put the safety in some stress with some of the looks. If they're going to go, they look like they played a little bit more zone last week than I had seen them in other games. So I don't know if that's what they'll do, but I think with Daniels, you may want to do them. And if they can take away the run with their front and play too deep, that's probably what they would prefer. So we'll see. But you can put the Bengals did a good job getting the safety and some stress with tight end and coming down, I think breaking in, and you got the receiver coming in behind him. You got him open for a pass. Burrow hit a couple deep balls against them too. Just really good throws, but also conceptually getting guys open. So you can do that against them, but you're going to have to. And then watching like Buffalo, I thought like Josh Allen, they started off that game. One of the things I thought, well, can you do the extended handoff thing? Well, the Bills tried that and it didn't work. But I also wonder if it doesn't work because you've got a quarterback, like, what kind of action are you leading into it? Because the Raiders did that and they had a little bit more success with that. But I also like one thing Gardner Minshew did for the Raiders when they beat them is he got rid of the ball quick. Jaden Daniels gets rid of the ball quick. And if you want to blitz, which they will, then one thing to know is Jaden Daniels has the second fastest time to throw, time before passing against the blitz. In other words, he gets rid of the ball. He's not holding the ball, so you're not getting to him as much as you would have gotten to other quarterbacks here in the past. So that's something you definitely have to do as well. Get that ball out fast. They have Ask the Texans going to be an issue. they do, and one of the players told me is like they have tendency breakers. In other words, you could show the same thing 6 times, but on that seventh, you show the same thing and you're going to break tendency and you're going to do something different. And that's where that's where linemen and the backs have to really be careful. So I think you're going to have to kind of fool them, get them to hesitate a little bit on some of this. Because what the Ravens will do, they're going to show, listen, man, I saw them show 6 and drop 3, including a defensive tackle. They'll show 7, drop 2. In the red zone, they'll drop defensive tackles. I saw them drop a defensive tackle again outside of the red zone, too, because they want to take away in the red zone. You want to take away some of the inside stuff, but you've got to make a quick decision down there. And that, again, Burrow had a touchdown pass in there, but it's a good, quick decision. Boom, it's open, go. But that's something they're going to do, and it leads to a lot of trouble for offenses. If you're holding the ball, like they will create negative plays. So you have to be aware of that. And as a fan, you should be aware of that. Don't panic because the key is just, basically don't get too many negative plays, of course. But if you get rid of the ball quick and just be patient and take those 5 yards, take that 4 yards over here, you can be okay because then you can start to find some things down the field because they have had some busts. Marlon Humphrey's a good corner. He's listed as questionable for this week, by the way. Terry McLaurin went against him in at times, I think in that joint practice. I know there was a couple things with him, but anyway, that helps. But it is a good defense and it is a good pass rush, and they will blitz from all over. You see them, there are times where they're dropping guys and you're bringing the corners off the edge from not just the slot. So this can be tough to do to defend that. And if you're a back, you just have to be aware. You have to be aware that they can send anybody at any time because that's what they do. And you don't always, the hard part is you don't always know who's coming. And so I'm watching some of the Cincinnati backs. I felt like a couple times they missed on their blocks. So Eckler and McNichols have been really good in that area. That helps. And so I think that's something that you're going to have to watch out for sure. But will be opportunities down the field. You just have to give them time. And again, be patient, take what's there, and look for those shots. I think it also helps too that you have a guy like Tyler Biadasz, very experienced guy, very good communicator up front. Allegretti has faced this defense or prepared for this defense. So I think that all that helps. And I'll be curious to see how they do with some of the pulling action if they use it as much. That's been a staple. They love using Biadasz and Cosme on that. So let's see how they handle that too. So anyways, going to be an interesting one with that group for sure. And then one more, let's talk about Lamar Jackson. It goes without saying that he and Jaden Daniels are very different. And if for people, it's funny because I know that question came up a few times this week. But it's not so much saying, are you guys the same? It's more, do you like the comparison? Do you like being compared to somebody? And the answer, of course, is no. Jaden Daniels, one thing I really like with him, he wants to be his own guy, and he deserves to be his own guy because guess what? He is his own guy, and they are different. Now, there are definitely things that they do that against the defense that is similar. In other words, like they're both explosive and they can both buy time and they're both dangerous on the move. And, whether it's running or throwing. And I just, you can do different things with them in the run game. In the red zone, this team is really good. Outside of one game, they've been really good in the red zone. And in that one game, it was mostly about penalties. But Jaden Daniels' legs helps a ton in there. He scored a couple of touchdowns, obviously. And sometimes it might be 3 yards, but you've got to defend it. So now you can hit something back against them. And so I think like that's where they are similar for sure. But I also think that Daniels is he's just a more accurate quarterback. Lamar Jackson is ultra explosive and they'll make big plays and they do some things conceptually with some route combos and all that are fun and can hurt teams and have hurt teams. But Daniels to me is just a more accurate passer. And some of that I think is mechanics. I think Daniels is really consistent with his mechanics, with his footwork, with his foot place, where the point, he gets his feet around it. His feet come with rotate with his eyes. His feet are basically his eyes. So where the feet are going, he's going. But he also, I think, does a good job on the move of getting his body all the way around. And sometimes when Jackson gets on the move, he might sail a ball, he might be a little bit off, but because he might not be as consistent with that. as Daniels. That's not like Lamar's gotten better. Lamar is a dangerous passer too, because sometimes when I say he might be off, it's still a completion. There was a play that they have. It was a nice little concept. This is where you have to be careful because they have Derrick Henry, obviously, and I'll talk about him for a minute now. But they had one play against the Bengals where a little swing pass to the right to Henry. Then the next play, they run the same action to the left. Well, what happens? Mark Andrews goes to block, then he goes upfield and he's open. And it should have been a touchdown. It should have been a walk-in touchdown, but the ball's underthrown. He catches at the 3, rolls with the 2, gets tackled. So it's a completion. Should have been a touchdown. They score on the drive, but my point is it was still completed. So you're still in trouble if you're a defense because they have still scored. So he will complete that. And he had some, he can throw that deep ball, with Zay Flowers. Like there's some things with him that he does that are really good. So you have to be very cognizant of that. But I think Daniels overall is just a more consistent passer. I don't think anybody can touch Jackson as a runner. So, and like I said, I think Jaden on the run does a really good job getting his hips, his basically his stomach pointing toward the target. He's really good at that, which is why I think he's so accurate on the move. And if you can get to me, like with Jackson, I think one of the things that you would want to do is get pressure on the inside, right? Get the pressure on the inside. Keep him hemmed in that pocket because I think you can get that feet moving a little bit, and that's where you get some inaccuracies. He may not be able to follow through. He might not follow through. I think Daniels is a little bit better in this, but Jackson will hurt you if you let him out, and if he can hurt you from the pocket too. But if you can condense that and get it to, he's going to sail, he's going to be missed, he'll miss a little bit. So there will be chances at times to maybe get something if you're fortunate, right? There's also an equal chance that he may just kill you on the play. So just, he's not a 50-50 guy, but there is a chance for the other, but there's a higher chance that he's going to hurt you because that's what his career has been. So, but yeah, I think those are some of the things with him that you have to watch for. They will, and I brought up Henry. He's obviously very good, going to be very difficult to stop. You can't just have one guy trying to tackle him. You can't have these big gaps because if you do, they're just going to pound you, pound you, pound you. And if you start doing that, you bring an 8 guy up, look out, Zay Flowers, right? So you've got to be aware of all that. They will run some crack, you're going to have to run some crack replace to stop him at times. It's hard. Like if they're going to run some of these sweeps, it'd be nice for the defense if you can kind of get him before it turns up. That's the goal. Easier said than done. But that is something that they will do. And that's something that these guys have to contend with. You got those corners, they're going to test you. They test you in the run game. And so, St. Just, Samerstill, those guys are going to be tested in that. And so I think, just be ready for that because it's going to come. But again, to me, get that pressure. If you can get that pressure up the middle again against him, gets those feet going a little bit sometimes, then I think that will give you a better chance to perhaps have some success. And it's funny because the combo of Henry and Jackson just makes it so difficult because then you also have, and Mark Andrews has not had the kind of start that I think people are accustomed to, but you've got multiple other targets, especially in the red zone that they've used. That's where it's dangerous. And this is where, like with Robinson, it's, Derrick Henry is at a different level than other backs. So when you get him in the red zone, who you got to pay attention? You got to pay attention to Derrick Henry. Then you have to pay attention to Lamar Jackson, and then they're going to slip a tight end out into the flat or a play action touchdown pass because that's what they do. And so I think you really have to be cognizant of that. The other thing is too, and one of the touchdowns against Cincinnati, to me, it came because they failed to lock on a guy. They failed. I can't remember who caught the touchdown pass back of the end zone, but you failed to lock on a guy. Like once he breaks out of that pocket, you've got to lock and plaster on a guy. If you let anybody get open, he's going to find them and he's going to hurt you because again, that's what he does. So, you can do things, you can have things contained, and then boom, big play. Same with Derrick Henry. Cincinnati did a good job with him. Boom, big play, little toss, then he's gone. Then it's 51 yards and you lose the game. So there you go, folks. That's enough for me. I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to cut myself off right now. You can applaud if you want to do that. But anyway, I'm looking forward to this game. It's going to be a very difficult game for Washington, as it should be, because Baltimore is good and you're playing on the road. It should be difficult. I'm most curious to see is how do they build off what they've shown? Do they continue to do that? does Baltimore do anything to maybe what are they trying to take away, and what or do they have success with it? There is despite me saying that it's not, I don't view this as a, oh my God, this is the measuring stick game. There's things that you can learn from this because you are facing a high quality opponent. And so what do we learn from this game? That's the thing I'm looking forward to do the most. I mean, you kind of go in, you kind of, I guess you'd have to favor Baltimore for sure. If I had to, if you had to guess, like that, would that be the team? Well, yeah, I think so. But I think this team can absolutely go up there and win because we've seen them play well, and we've seen in the NFL, it's the you never know league, right? And you've seen Baltimore struggle with the Raiders and lose to the Raiders. So I think anything can happen. I do think that what Washington now has is the attention of the other teams. That's different. So you're not going to sneak up on someone and say, well, okay, it's in. You like to think that pro athletes don't look at it like that. But what I do know is you now have the attention of the league. Jaden Daniels has the attention of the league. This offense has the attention of Baltimore's defense. You don't think that Baltimore's defense, after last week, a tough game against Cincinnati, a bad game against Cincinnati, that they're look that they view this as a game like, hey, maybe they can get their reputation back. So I would say for sure. But I'm looking forward to it. Again, I think whatever happens, I like where this team is headed. I think they'll continue in that direction. So there you go. That's it from me. I'll be back after the game, wrapping up the Ravens Commanders. Looking forward to this one, folks. I hope you are too. And we'll talk to you next time.